Thank you so much. I'm really blessed to be here with you all again. Huge gift to come and share with you guys. And besides that, lovely views coming in, and getting to stay with Sharon is a huge treat. So many beautiful souls that I've met from the previous years, and then getting to hang out with some new ones as well. When I graduated from high school, we didn't have money to go to college in my family, and so I just went to work as a secretary and did some work like that for a while. And then my husband bought a convenience store, and we were working from 6 a.m. till midnight, 7 days a week. The mop weighed more than I did, and I was helping do all this stuff, and it didn't take me too long. Sometimes I'm a little slow, but it didn't take me too long to say, you know, I want to go to nursing school. I don't think I want to do this anymore. And he said, okay, honey, that's fine, go. And so that's what I did, and I graduated in 1980, and my very first job out of nursing school was on a brand new oncology unit at St. Francis Hospital in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And it was pretty stressful. It was hard work, but I loved those precious patients and the families and what I was getting to experience with them. I would drive home an hour after getting off work. Sometimes if I worked like 3 to 11, it was late. And I would try to talk to my husband about how I felt, about my emotions and what had happened to me. And he said, I don't know what to say to you. You're freaking me out. He said, I don't know. He said, why don't you go sit by the fireplace and journal and see if that helps you process some of these emotions you're dealing with. And I was going, okay, fine. But it's what I did. I started journaling. And writing about my experiences with these beautiful souls. So I took one of the pieces that I had written to the local newspaper, and I said, could you use this? And he said, yes. He said, can you write one every week? And I said, sure. And so I titled it Beyond Statistics and wrote that column for many, many years. Then I went to Sedona, Arizona, 2011. There was this, I go there every year if I can. I just love it. It's very spiritual to me. And I had a flyer come to me in the mail, write your book in 5 days. And my husband said, you need to go do that. And I said, you go write a book in 5 days. You know what? And he goes, no, Becki, you're not going to know until you try. And so I did. I wrote my book in 5 days. And you know why? I had so much in here, so much from all those years, and it was pouring out of me. You know, I'm quite comical on many occasions for many reasons, but I was sitting there typing, you know, and crying at the same time, and people were going, what's she writing about? Because the wounds and the experiences and everything were just coming out of me. Huge gift to do that. So, and that's my book. I do want to tell you it's only $2.99 on Kindle if you want to purchase it. I'm just sharing stories, all kinds of stories, and the last chapter is about me and my brother and his experience. And I've titled the book Transitions, a Nurse's Education About Life and Death. So I went back to Sedona. This gentleman there has a group of people that he meets with once a month, and this is what they talk about. Afterlife experiences, people that have had near-death experiences, all kinds of things. And he said, Becki, do you care if I film you for YouTube? And I was going, I don't care. I'm just going to pay attention to these 25 people in front of me. And that's what I did. Today it has 1.9 million hits on it. And what I say to that is, it's not because of me, it's because of the stories. People are blessed with some of the experiences that my patients had, and gives them hope, One evening at a fundraiser dinner in our local community, a very kind lady pulled me aside. She said, say, Becki, I read that article in the paper the other day about one of your patients talking about a near-death experience they had. She said, I had one when I was 4 years old. Would you mind coming to talk to me at my house? My husband and I love her. She's just the sweetest, dearest soul. And so he went with me, and we sat down, and she started talking. And she said that when she was 4 years old, she had polio. Tulsa, Oklahoma, the hospitals there, back in that day, little bitty white metal beds in the children's ward, and the nuns were the nurses and taking care of all of them. And she said, at one point, she told her dad that she just didn't think she was going to make it, and she was just a little bitty person. And he said, "You're okay, you're okay." And then she said, all of a sudden, she said the pain was horrific. It was just so, so horrible. And all of a sudden, she felt herself pop out of her body and start going up. And she said, "Becki, it was so wonderful. I didn't have any more pain. I wasn't hurting anymore. I just felt so free and so able to like take a deep breath in spirit." And then she said she noticed the nuns were running towards her bed all of a sudden, and there was a lot of commotion going on, and then she was slammed back down into her body. And she said all the pain returned, the fever, everything. And when things calmed down a little bit, and they realized she was going to stay there, she told her dad, she tried to get his attention. She said, "Dad, I died. I was raising up, going up." And he goes, "Shh, don't say that. You just dream that, and don't ever tell anybody that." So for all the years, she felt like it was wrong to tell anybody, and she kept it inside. And she said then those very first near-death experience books started coming out, and she started reading them. And she said, then I knew it was not just a dream. I was visiting a sweet soul who happened to be a Pentecostal minister. This is one of my favorite stories. He was so, so precious. I was in Tulsa working out of the hospice there, and he lived in Sand Springs, Oklahoma, and he had a Pentecostal church in their little house, sitting facing the west, and the church was over here, and a big oak tree over here on the right that he loved dearly. It was probably 200 or 300 years old, huge, old. So that's where he wanted his hospital bed, was right in front of the picture window, where he could look out if he wanted to. He was not afraid to die. And he said, Becki, just tell me what you can tell me that will help me through this process. I want to know everything. And his wife, on the other hand, wanted to have anything to do with me. If she saw me pull up, and she ran to the kitchen. That was her safe place. She liked being in there. So we had this conversation, and every time I visited, we would visit. He was dying from damage that had been done to his heart and his lungs in the 70s from chemo and radiation. And as you can imagine, much more caustic then than even now. But again, he wasn't afraid. And then one day, I get a call from the lady that was taking all the phone calls for our department. She had a sense of humor, and she called everybody Florence. She said, okay, Florence, you need to get out there to Sand Springs. That wife called, and she's real upset. She thinks she's dying. And I said, okay. So I called her, and I said, it's okay, sweetheart. I'm on my way. I'll be there as quick as I can. Have your neighbor come over and be with you. Try to remember what I've shared with you. And when I got there, the neighbor ran home, and she ran to the kitchen. And he was blue. He was dark blue in his recliner. You get this superhuman strength sometimes when you're with those situations, and I just grabbed him, picked him up, carried him over to the bed, and I crawled in behind him. And so I was holding him up with my fingertips on his shoulders. And he tilted his head back, and he said, Becki, do you see them? And I said, no, sir. I said, tell me what you're seeing. He said, sweetheart, the room's now full of angels. He said, they're all on the right, and they're all on the left. He said, I gotta go. And he raised up his right hand, and he said, oh, my Lord, my God. And he fell back against me, and he was gone. I just sat there for a while. People often ask me, why don't you do something different that's not so depressing? I wouldn't trade what I've got to do for anything in the world, because for me it's holy ground every time, every time. They blessed me immensely, so wouldn't trade that. One day, I was assigned to go see a lady who had been admitted to our hospice program after leaving ICU and having been resuscitated 3 times. Okay, guys, she was hilarious. I pull up to her house. There's a sidewalk, and there's 2 different shades of pink flowers going up the side. Front door was pink. Shutters were pink. Everything was about pink. I get inside. She's in a recliner. Guess what color it is? I don't care. And then she's got a little apron on. And oh boy, she gave me a look. She said, now listen here. She said, if you try to lay a hand on me to resuscitate me when I start crossing over, I'll haunt you when I do die. She said, you better honor that DNR, and I mean it. She said, I've been to Heaven's Gate 3 times, just beginning to enter in. Bam! Somebody resuscitated me and brought me back. She said, so don't be doing, and I said, honey, I'm not going to do that. I said, what we're about is just being here to help you through this time, make you comfortable, try to do whatever we can for you. She said, okay, then have a seat. Precious soul had out her china and glassware and beautiful vases. What is the name of those beautiful antique vases? I can't think of what it is right now, but all of her stuff. She said, to see what I'm doing here now is I'm sorting this out for nieces and nephews and grandkids and stuff like that. I'm just going to sit here and enjoy doing that. And I said, well, I think that's a great idea. She said, honey, why is it we keep all that fine china in a china cabinet and we don't ever get it out? She said, what's that about? She said, you know what, you ought to go get a piece of that out every now and then and eat your peanut butter and jelly sandwich on it, because that's what it's for, is to eat off of. I said, well, I guess you're right. I said, that makes a lot of sense. I enjoyed the rest of my time with her and went home, and as I was going down that sidewalk, I thought, tomorrow, Roseville pottery, that's what it is. I thought, tomorrow I'm going to cut some of these flowers and put them in a Roseville pottery vase for her while she continues doing that. So I got there and I was headed to the front door, and the neighbor met me and said, sweetheart, she died in her recliner last night. And I said, good for her. Nobody tried to resuscitate her. She went peacefully and she got to go be with her husband, and she won't be haunting me. I didn't think I wanted that to happen. A few years ago, I went to visit a friend of mine that I've known just about all my life. And he was dying. He wanted to just chat. He was famous in our town for making neon signs, you know, for businesses. And he was a rascal. He talked about his Army days, his career, and his family. And then he turned and he said, you know, Becky, I'm not afraid to die. And I said, oh, really? I said, how come? He said, because I've already done that. And I said, oh, you have? I said, when did you do that? And he said, well, last year I was having this terrible pain in my gut, and I had my wife drive me to the ER, and when I got there, they put me in a bed, and they started working on me with urgency to save me, but all of a sudden I was out of my body, and he said I was sliding down like a water slide or something, and it was surrounded by beautiful water on both sides he was talking about. And he said I was headed to the most wonderful light. I didn't have that pain anymore in my gut, and I had such peace, incredible peace and love, that I don't know if I can fully describe to you. But he said, then I heard my wife's voice. Honey, please, don't leave me yet. He said, isn't that strange? All that racket in the ER, and all I heard was her voice. So why I was able to return then, and now I'm dying? He said, I don't know. But what I do know is that I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to go. I have a firm hope. I don't fully understand all that I was feeling and seeing, but there's nothing that compares on this side. I did have the privilege of getting to be next to him when he crossed over with his wife and his daughters. And he went very, very peacefully with a smile on his face. Okay, my mother-in-law had a stroke at an early age, and a debilitating stroke. But she was always a big talker. So she managed to work through her difficulties, and she chatted quite a bit. She fell at home And we decided that she really needed, even though she didn't want to, she really needed to be in a nursing center where she could get better attention and better care, because all of us were working. So one day, and she liked to roll her wheelchair up to the doorway. She wanted to know what was going on, who was coming up and down the hall, and who was visiting who, and if any of the nurses' aides were flirting with anybody. She had a story to tell us every time we showed up. So one day she called me and she said, my husband's name is John, she said, can John come see me? And I said, he's in Oklahoma City. My daughter had named her Ninny when she was little, and I said, Ninny, what can I do for you? Can I come? Would that be okay? And she goes, yeah, I guess. So I went to see her, and she said, close the door. And I went, okay. So I closed her door. I got close to her good ear, and I said, tell me what's going on. You see, just a few weeks, even maybe not even about 2 weeks or so before that, she had had surgery to remove the beginning of cancer in her bowels. And she was doing good. They think they got all of it. She was doing fine. She said, I died in surgery. I said, you did? I said, tell me what happened. She said, well, they rolled me in there, and they started messing with her utensils and everything, and all of a sudden, I was in the corner of the operating suite, and I could see everything that was going on in there. You know, I'm from a small town. Everybody knows everybody else, knows all the nurses, doctors, everything. She quoted everybody's names that were in there, where they were standing. She told me where the instruments were, how they were laid out. She told me about everything that was going on. She said, I felt so free and so light. She said, I was just beginning to notice there was so much more going on beyond the corner of that operating suite. But she said, then they noticed, I guess, that I was leaving them, and they started working frantically on me, and she goes, I'm back. She said, and she was a strong Catholic, and she said, what do you think about that? And I said, I think that was a huge gift for you to get to experience that, even though it must have been very frightening. And she said, yeah, I think so too. It wasn't too long, maybe less than 2 months. My husband and I were having dinner at a lake resort, and we got the call, you need to come now. They're transporting your mother to the hospital from the nursing home. She's not doing well. And when we got there, and she had always been afraid of death, always. And when we got there, she was in the emergency room. We gathered around her bed, and the doctor said, her lungs are failing her, and we need to intubate her. We need to get her on a respirator. And she held up her hand, and she did this. He looked at me, and he said, what do you guys want to do? And I said, you need to ask her. And he said, do you want us to put you on a respirator so that you can breathe better? He said, do you understand what this means? And she was smiling. He said, okay, what do you guys want? And I said, I want pain medicine if we need it. I want oxygen if she wants it. I'd like to have a private room if we can have it. And let us be with her and do the DNR, honor the DNR that she is explaining to us that she wants. He said, okay. We got in there, and we got her comfortable, and she was smiling and fine, and she went peacefully about 4 or 5 in the morning with no struggle. She had always been horrified of death. That, whatever made it happen with the surgery, was such a huge, huge gift to her, because her transition was so much easier because of it. My brother, I'm the oldest, 2 really normal sisters, and then my brother. We were the ornery ones. The other 2 are saints, still are. They both know how to cook and everything. So my brother was wild. He had reason to be. There was some craziness in our childhood, and he took the brunt of most of it. And he did drugs. He drank lots of alcohol. He wrecked 2 motorcycles, 2 or 3 cars, just wounded soul. So he calls me one day, and he was a welder, and he said, I got to go to have a CAT scan. I said, why? And he said, because I'm coughing up some blood, and they want to do that. And he said, well, I want to know if you'll go with me. And I said, yeah, I will. And so I did, and they did that, and they handed me the stuff before we got even out of the hospital. And they said, we've made an appointment with an oncologist in Tulsa. He's got cancer that's wrapped all around his aorta, all through his chest. It's everywhere. And I said, okay, let's go do this. So we went to meet the oncologist, and she showed us in plain view everything that was going on. She said, we cannot save you, but we can buy you some time if you want to do that. She said, the chemo and radiation are going to be rough stuff. He said, I know what rough is. Bring it. Bring it. I'm not afraid of your chemo and your radiation. And so that's how we started. Him getting what he needed to try to calm this stuff down. So went through several rounds of rough stuff. I slept in the windowsill sometimes at the hospital of his room to try to be there. He was confused at times and wanted to pull, they put an IV up here one point because his veins were worn out. And he started trying to pull it out. And so I stayed with him to try to help make him more comfortable and not be so afraid. And we got through all of that, radiation and chemo, some of the oncologists that I used to work with many years ago. And they pulled me aside, and they said, Becki, it's not good. And I said, whatever he wants, I want you to do. That's okay with you. That's what we want. And he said, okay. So we went home, and with radiation, you got to go back every day. Every day, drive, go back and do that. So he had told me, well, I got a call, and all I could hear was him gasping. He lived about 20 minutes from me, just gasping. I said, I'm calling an ambulance, I'll be right there. So I hung up, called the ambulance, got in my car, headed that way. Ambulance was there, loading him on a gurney, and he was blue. He was very, very blue. Got him to the hospital. They did x-rays. They came to me and they said, Becki, he's in bad shape. He has pneumonia and cancer, and it's just everywhere. We don't know. He needs to go to Tulsa, and all the ambulances are in use right now. I said, fine, we'll do this. Put him in my car, held his x-ray, his IV in my right hand, threw the other stuff back there, and drove with my left hand to Tulsa. About an hour's drive. Angels all around us, going, everybody out of the way. Wild woman driving her brother to Tulsa. Get him there, and they get started on him, and it was a rough ride for 2 or 3 days. Discharged him, go home. With radiation, you got to go every day, and so I picked him up one day, and we're driving, and he tapped me on the shoulder, and I said, what? He said, well, that night that you came to the house and got me? And I said, yeah. He said, well, I was about gone. I said, well, no kidding, you were purple. He goes, no, Becki, I was about gone. I said, what did you see? He said, I was choking, and I was choking, and I was choking, and then all of a sudden I'm out of my body, and I'm in this white, misty area, room, whatever. And he said, our mother, who he was closest to, and she was closest to him of us 4 kids, our mother, who had died a couple of years before, was approaching him and on his left side, smiling. His best friend, who had committed suicide the year before, was coming to him on his right side. Both of them smiling, looking at him. And my brother knew what was happening. And he said, please, I need just a little bit more time. He wanted to make peace with his daughter and my dad. And he just needed a little bit more. And my mother said, okay then, son. Breathe. Boom, he was on the gurney. He said, what do you think about that? And I said, what do you think? He said, I think she bought me some time. And she did. We had a few more months, and he got to make peace with everybody that he felt like he needed to. As he was dying, at my father's house, after many days of being there, he turned to me in the middle of the night. I was on the couch and looked at me and smiled. And he said, "Are you a nurse?" And I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "My sister's a nurse." I said, "Oh, that's nice." And he went peacefully, peacefully. I know every one of you in here has had an experience with somebody, and it is hard when we let them go. But the gifts that these people continue to give us and remind us is that we're one beautiful human family, and we're all so beloved, so very, very beloved. And we are not alone when that transition time comes. How has this impacted me? People ask me this all the time. Are you afraid to die? No, I'm not afraid to die. I'm not rushing it. I like where I am, and I like what I'm doing. I love my life. I mean, I got to stay at her house. That's huge. Had a great time. The gifts of being able to share these stories, and then people, I travel and speak all the time, and people line up to tell me their stories, and which blesses me again, just over and over. I believe we are spiritual beings who, for a brief time, even if you live to be 110, are in these clay vessels to learn, to grow our souls, keep a sense of humor, love others as Jesus taught us. All people, no matter what color their skin is, their diet, their political persuasion, I know, doesn't matter, or their religion, to love and take care of this earth, our home, her vegetation, her waters, and I wrote this a long, long time ago. And you see even how now we're being reminded over and over. And the animal kingdom, huge animal person here. She'll tell you, yeah, I'll rescue everything. My husband goes, take it back. I believe we're here for purpose, on purpose, and that we get to be here. Huge honor to be here. We can do so much for one another, not because we want a pat on the back or a trophy, but just because we honor the life of Jesus and his unfathomable love. We take no earthly items with us when we do die, but what we do take is the love that's woven into the DNA of our souls. In our memory banks, hold how we treat one another. The person that's sacking your groceries, the person that's serving you iced tea, the person that's mowing your yard, the person that's just wherever you are. We all have the same spiritual DNA. We all come from God. God. And if we can look at people with new eyes and new hearts, kind words and deeds, it's not like you're wanting a pat on the back, but you just recognize we are one. They told me it's really important that we learn to hold lightly and not tightly to what we have. We're not taking it with us. Some people have mentioned trying, but it doesn't go, doesn't work. It's all temporary. Quantum physics peeps were trying to find out what the teeny tiniest component of us was, and they kept breaking everything down until they ended up with energy. I call it the divine spark. That divine spark is in everybody. And I know there are people you swear they've up and lost it, just by the way they're behaving or the way they're talking or how they're responding. Usually that's from wounds. That divine spark is still in there. But if they're not real nice, I just bless them and run somewhere else. I know there's some people that we might meet that can confuse us about that. But my patience taught me to respect everybody without judgment. Because you know what? When everybody has on a hospital gown, what are you going to judge? They're not driving a fancy car in front of you. They're not pulling a huge weight of money behind them. They don't have any movie stars on the gurney with them. They don't know anybody necessarily in the White House or Hollywood, which probably doesn't help a lot of people anyway right now. But the gift is understanding nobody's better than anybody else. No one. No one. We're all precious, and we're all beloved on so many levels. My husband is concerned about me sometimes, but I told him not to. So, one of the best gifts for me from that YouTube video is that I get emails from people, and I want to share you just a few stories of theirs. I love this person. I loved your video. A few years ago, I had a dream and I died. Well, I'm not sure. I think I did. Since early childhood, I've occasionally had tidal-wave dreams. It'd be at a beach about a block away, and I'd see a huge, black, gigantic wave coming, but as soon as it got to me, I woke up. Until this one time, I wasn't ill at the time except for a bad head cold, and the dream started out as usual, but this time the wave came in and came over me. I was tumbled and thrown violently around by the water and was in sheer panic. It seemed real. I couldn't breathe, I was drowning, I was panicking, and then the water stopped rushing, and I was thinking I was dying, but then I realized I wasn't suffering. I wasn't breathing with my mouth or nose, but I wasn't suffering. I started to calm down. It was dark. Then small lights, lots of them, started swirling around me. They were comforting. And for some reason I knew that I was not a body anymore, but just a soul. I was energy, and I could somehow feel my own energy, kind of like feeling an adrenaline rush. I was moving along with the fairy-like lights. I had a peace that I can't put in words. It was peace, and it was joy, and it was so very good. I had not a worry in the world, and I was really happy. And at some point as I moved along, I no longer had worldly thoughts. I had no worldly memories. I had no earthly memories. It was as if my existence on earth as a human being had never happened. Then, next thing, boom, I'm in my bed next to my husband. I'm on my back and I look around. I know I'm home in my bed. The strangest thing, though, from my waist down, I still had the feeling of the energy. I lifted up my covers. My legs were there. It's always good to find your legs whenever you're... Body intact. End of story. I'm very curious. Have you ever heard anybody else describe this? I love these emails. Hi there, Becki. I hope your day is treating you well. I just watched you on that YouTube video. My father passed away from cancer 7 days ago. I miss him so very much, and it's been so hard to accept that I won't see him again in this life. But as soon as he passed, I felt this overwhelming feeling that he is with me, a feeling I can't describe. I know that when my day comes, my dad will be there, and that makes me look forward to that day. Thank you for sharing with all of us. My name is Fran. I came across your YouTube presentation. My stepmom passed away last year from complications of dementia. She always told me stories before she died. Also, I had a near-death accident in New York City in a 2001 car accident that saved me from being in the buildings. I told so many people about my experience, but many don't believe me. I don't know why your YouTube presentation showed up, because I wasn't looking for it. It lets me know I'm not crazy after all. Do you know how much that blesses me? You know, for somebody to be able to hear my patients' stories, and they're reminded that their stories are true and real too. Some of the things that these people have taught me is that to live this day, each moment matters. Even if you live to be 110, it goes by fast. Forgive yourself and forgive others. One of my patients told me he was sad that he remained so angry at an old friend over 40 years, and at this point, he couldn't remember why. He said, Becki, I'm dying. I don't wish to carry this anger anymore. I'm sorry I chose to waste all those years staying mad at him. I miss him. I'm going to put it down, and I'm going to forgive myself for being so stubborn. Staying mad has not served me well, and I'm letting this go. God be with him. God be with me. We are not here by accident. We're here on purpose, with purpose. We are beautiful, beloved beings who have come here to grow our souls, experience life. We are here in Earth School, and we're here to love and to learn how to respond to and care for one another. We're one human family, dear nurse, is what they told me. We're not here just to take up space. We need to be about connecting to the business at hand. Whatever comes before you and you recognize is something that you can do for someone else. The only thing we take with us when we leave this life is the love woven into the DNA of our souls. And it's not about how big our house is or how fancy our car is or how many diamonds we own, how much land we have, or in my neck of the woods, how many cows you have. No, how much hay you put up for the winter. It's our heart and our soul's beauty that helps us understand that it's not about how much we accumulate. You don't take it with you. I had one patient said, Becki, I went down to that funeral home to pick me out a casket, and they don't have luggage racks. I'm not taking any of that with me. On more than one occasion, a patient would tell me of a regret or two, and the number one regret I heard was, I wish I had done more for others. One dear gentleman farmer told me, Becki, I'm out of time, and I can't hurry fast enough to share the small amount of wealth I own. But even harder for me still is that I can't recreate my being with those who needed me to just listen to them. I was always in a rush to get another chore done. There were family members and neighbors I should have sat down with and just heard what they needed to say, shared their burden a little, honored their need to speak it. And I'm not saying I would want to do any of it for a reward in the beyond, but because it makes my heart sing. Well, as you can imagine, I'm still learning. I think I will be until I cross over someday. I'm very, very grateful for each and every opportunity because people still call me. I had a call just a couple of weeks ago if I'd come visit some lady that I'd known all my life. She was nearing her transition. I spent 2 or 3 days hanging out with her and her husband. At the very end, she could barely whisper, but she tilted her head back and she said, oh, Becki, you're so beautiful. She said, there's Jesus, there's Jesus. And she died peacefully. People go, why don't you do something that's a little bit more fun? And I said, no, you don't have any idea. It's a huge honor, huge, huge honor. Thank you so much for letting me share my stories with you today.